So guys, I'm going to show you how to do the bullet in Blender. I'm using a slightly earlier version than Blender, but essentially it's all the same. If you find any other difficulties with it, then you should know most of these by now. So as ever, we start with a cube. You should know most of this stuff, but I'll go for it anyway. So we turn it into a subdivision surface, as you know, which is in the modifier thing, which is this little spanner thing. And then we're going to turn it into a sub-D. 3D animator talk for a subdivision tool, by the way. And I'm going to turn it up to 3 in subdivisions, and that's more than enough. You don't need any more. If you turn it up to 6, you'll crash the computer. So now that I've done that, what I need to do is I need to start shaping this, and the only way I can do that is by going into edit mode. So I go into edit mode. So it doesn't look much like a bullet yet, but if I start putting these things or loops, it will create subdivisions in it, which will mean that I can change the shape of this. So I'm going to change it to that kind of shape, and then I'm going to go here where you can grab the vertices, edges or faces, and I'm going to grab a face, and then I can pull the face around here, and then I can make it more of a bullet shape. So I'm going to use loop, cut and slide again to just put another division in there. So there is my basic shape of a bullet. Doesn't look much like a bullet, but it will do later. So now what I need to do is I need to do the sort of the end part of the bullet here. Now I'm going to grab these edges here. If you press Alt, you'll be able to grab all of them as a loop, and then I'm just going to grab those. I'm going to move them towards the end, and then I'm going to create an extra couple of loops here. So here's one here-ish, and here's another one here-ish. So there you go. This is a bit hard because it looks a bit laggy, and the reason is because I'm doing screen capturing and 3D animation at the same time. Never a good idea. So I'm pressing Alt, and then Alt Shift click, and then I'm going to grab, and then I'm just going to Shift select these last ones. So now I've got those, I can scale them up. So I go to the scale button here, press the little white circle in the middle, and then I can scale the whole lot up. Right, so now I'm going to just start shaping the end of it a little bit better. So if I move this along, I can make all of these sort of bits a little bit better. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make this one a bit, I just want to give it a machined look kind of thing. I mean, at the moment it's a bit big, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, and then I am going to press, I'm going to start, so I'm going to go select, and then what I'm going to do is I am going to try and select more. So it says select more. So what it will do is it will just go down the order, and I'll go select more, or you can press Control number pad plus. But I don't have a number pad on my machine. There you go. And there you go. You've learned something new about me. How interesting. So select more, and let's see what we got. So I'm going to scale this down. It's a bit too big, so I'm just going to press S to scale and just make that a little bit more realistic, so it's like a bullet. So there we go. That will do. Yes. Right. Then I'm going to do a little ridge, which is between the bullet and the other bit. And so I'm going to grab my edges. So go down here, grab my edge, and then I'm just going to move it along a little bit because I think it's a bit too far down there. And then I'm going to add another couple of loops either side of this. So there's one. It's really difficult because it's a bit laggy. So there's one, and then here's another one. Come on, machine, catch up. And so here's another one, and I'm going to put it on either side of that little one I created before. Then I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to scale it just a little bit, just a tiny bit in, not too much because it will look a bit weird. So I'll just do a little bit, and then grab this, and then I'm going to create hard edge to it, so it kind of makes it look machined a little bit. And then do the same here. So my machine will catch up. It's normally much faster than this. So there we go. So now I've got all of those, and what I can do is, it's all a bit far apart, so I can go select more, and it will keep grabbing more, and select more. And now I've kind of grabbed those faces, and so what I can do is I can scale those in sort of that direction, just to make that little join a bit better. And then I can grab this, and I'm just going to move that down so it makes it look more like a bullet. So if I go back into object mode, it looks more like a bullet. It's looking better. It's not perfect, but kind of okay. I need to add another little loop down here, and that will create the hard division between that bit. So now it's like that. When I'm in object mode, if I press here where it says shading, you've got smooth or flat. So I'm going to go for smooth. So there you go. It's looking pretty good. So one bullet. Now I'm just going to do the end bit with the sort of the machining at the end. So I'm going to grab this face, and rather than putting edge loops, because if I put edge loops, I'm going to create like weird kind of things along here that will turn my bullet square, and I don't want to do that. So what I want to do is I want to do something called an extrude. So I'm going to extrude it, and then if I do it that way, it's going to go crazy, and I just want to do it a little bit, not much, just a tiny bit like that. And then I want to scale this in. So I'm going to scale it in. So now that face is very small. Well, now those little triangles mean that I've actually gone the other way, and I've scaled it within itself, which is a bit of a weird concept, but it kind of means that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some more loops in. So I'm going to put one sort of around here, and then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to put another one here, and then I'm going to put another couple, one here, and then I'll put another one here. Or if the button will press. So there. And then I'm going to grab this one, and then I'm going to grab these two, and then I'm going to push them back down the length of the bullet, and then I sort of create that machined look to it. And then I can do what I did previously by adding these, and it makes these edges a bit harder. And another one. No, it just gives it a sort of a machined look to it. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. So, and then, ooh, come on, work. So just trying to kind of create that kind of look as if it's the end of a bullet. I don't really know what an end of a bullet is because I do not own a gun. So that's going to be good enough for me, I think. And now what I want to do is I want to separate this object and turn it into two separate objects, so I can have this bit at the end being brass, and then the bit at the front, I guess, being, I don't know, like a copper or a metal or something like that. So I go back into edit mode, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this face, and then I'm going to go select more, and then it's going to work its way down. It's going to work its way down the line. So let's see what it's selected. So it's kind of selected those bits, and then I think I want one more. So select more. So now it's got those. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to separate that from the other bit. And the way that you do that is, it's in a sub-menu somewhere, but I honestly can't remember where it is. But what I normally do is press space and then put separate. So it's there. And the shortcut is P. By selection. And now what I have, when I go back to object mode, is I have this and I have that. And so I now have two objects that I can do what I want with. And what I want two objects for is so that I can color them different colors. And then what I'll do is I'll duplicate these objects and then I'll have kind of a bunch of them. And then I have lots of bullets. So before I even do any of that, I want to turn this from Blender render to Cycles render. And the difference is that Cycles render is a much more accurate render engine than Blender. So that's kind of a complicated topic, but we'll get onto that another day, and you can ask me on your own if you want, but it's quite technical and a bit boring. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to change this one to a different color. So up here, you got lots of different options for every object. So selecting your object, go to here, and this is the materials. At the moment it's got a default material, which is just a grey material that is just sort of irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. So I'm going to get rid of that. And it slightly changes color because it goes back to kind of a base color. And I'm going to click on the other object and I'm going to delete that material as well. So now none of these objects have got a material. So selecting this one, I'm going to select a new one, and I'm going to make this a glossy material. And let's go for, I guess, like a copper color, something like that. That seems to be about right for me. So I'm going to go for like that, kind of a deep orange color. And I'm going to go OK. And you're not going to see anything. And the reason why is because at the moment I'm looking at this as a solid. If I go here and go to material, it will show me the color of that with no reflections. And then if I go to rendered, everything will go very slow and it will show it. But it's not being glossy because there's nothing for it to be glossy against. There's nothing for it to reflect. It hasn't got an environment. And so I would need to create an environment in order for it to reflect something. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create, really simply, a plane. So your add menu is down the bottom, but my one's up the top because I'm using a previous version. Not because I prefer it or it's any better, but because I thought it might work quicker with the recording on full screen video. So here's a plane, and I'm just going to drop it down here. And then I am going to give that a material, and so let's give it a I think I'm going to give it a glossy material as well. I'll give it a color just so I can see it's different. I'll give it a blue color, and I'll name this material if my Mac will catch up, floor. So when I go now into rendered, I see I've got a nice shiny floor which is reflecting that, and that's reflecting it a little bit as well, but it's really, really reflective. It's like a mirror reflective, and it says here on the roughness it's at 0, and that means that it's like a mirror. If I increase that, it puts a little bit of sort of texture to that roughness, so it makes it, now it turns it into sort of like a galvanized steel kind of thing. So that's kind of what's happening. And what's happening here is that this color mixing with blue is reflecting green, and that's kind of basic color theory. So I'm going to take my lamp, and my lamp at the moment is a point lamp. I'm going to use nodes, and my lamp is emitting 100. So what I want to do is I want to make that much stronger. So let's say 500. So now I'm getting a little bit more light thrown onto my scene. Next thing is I'm going to grab this object. So I'm going to go into material so I can see what all the colors are. I'm going to grab this object and this one, and I'm going to create a new material again, and I am going to make this one glossy too, and I'm going to turn this into a kind of brass color or something along those lines. You can always change these settings later, and I am going to go into rendered view, and it's very, 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 very glossy, and I'm going to make that less glossy because it's going to be realer if I make it less glossy. So there we go, it's less glossy. And then this one, I'm going to make that less glossy as well. So now we're starting to kind of get something that's looking a little bit better. I don't like my background, so I can change that, you know, whatever you want. It doesn't really matter what you color. So if we do orange, then it will turn orange, and so on and so forth. So this is all great, and we have a relatively finished kind of bullet. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this and this. I'm going to shift select them. I'm going to press space, and I'm going to join them together. So now I can move this object around kind of relatively freely. So I've sort of like set up my scene a little bit, and now I've got an object, I've got a background, and I'm relatively good to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up a little scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another plane. So I'm going to mesh plane. Here's another plane, which is there. I'm going to scale that, and then I'm going to rotate that. To roughly 90. If you want to check it, you can press this little arrow key up here, and what that will do is you can go into the rotation, and I was 0.49 off. That's pretty good, I think, considering I was doing it by guesswork. And so now I have a 90-degree wall. I'm going to put it into position kind of here. That will do. And now what I want to do is I'm going to duplicate that, Shift D to duplicate it, and then this one I am going to Control Z. I'm going to rotate this one in Z, and I'm going to make that, let's say, 90 as well. So now what I have is I have a tiny little scene. It's not terribly exciting, but it does work in terms of there are two walls and a floor. So just to make this fit and to just square everything away, I am going to just scale it up a little bit. And I'm going to take this object and I'm going to scale it because it's a little bit big. And there we go. So I'm gonna, let's have a look at this in rendered. So there's our scene. Not looking terribly interesting. And that's, a lot of that is to do with the fact that it hasn't got any kind of, there's no textures, I haven't really played with the lighting at all. And so what we'll do is we'll work